All right, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you so much. And good evening once more. Very interesting conversations that you were having right now. Yeah, it'll be good to follow through on them. But you're going to be making money soon, so I'm sure you're going to be following through. All right. Tonight we deal with task A. So I'm going to be working together with Elton tonight. So Elton did confirm we had a mini strategy session this morning, just to make sure that we are aligned and we are able to just break down in terms of what we want to deliver today. Because I think from our perspective, which is something that Asen did say to you on Saturday, that it's all about taking away the transferable skills. And what some call that will be acumens, professional skills, and enabling competencies, because those are the key skills that you can take away you can take away today from the workshop, and you can implement them wholly come 6th December. Actually come the 1st of December, which is something that is also quite important to note. So the idea, therefore, for tonight is just to then help you with those set of skills, set of tools that you need to walk away with from the workshop, especially when it relates to math as well as strategy, risk management. So what we're going to therefore do is that we're going to talk quite a lot in general, and we're going to also zoom into the task. And what then Elton will do will then come and even lay much more stronger foundations and give you additional handouts that we believe will be really helpful beyond the workshop. So one of the things that is always the case, and what we have seen quite a lot, is that strategy, it's one of those, there's usually one task in the APC. And in most cases, it's a well-triggered task. You can probably be a little bit concerned with accounting, audit, and so on. But when it comes to strategy, it's always much clearer. But what is the tricky part about it is the expected work that you need to do. And that is what I'm hoping that you saw from the expectation in the reflection video. And now what we're going to unpack, and furthermore, what Elton is going to build on. So in the reflection, just to quickly go back there, you will have then seen that in identifying the trigger, we could not move away from the context. And we had to emphasize the context so many times, because strategy does not happen in a vacuum, but it happens in a context. It considers both the external context, the internal context, and the other relevant aspects. And that is something that we're going to emphasize today. Those three, or rather two elements. And you will remember the slide that I shared with you when we kicked off, that I said business acumen essentially has three elements, if one may call it. The consideration of external environments factor in making a decision. That's one. And two, the consideration of internal factors in making business decision. In other words, you cannot disconnect the two when you talk about strategy. And what makes strategy is that essentially the need to consider the context, internal as well as external. Okay, so that's number one. So if you then say that, Rendani, I understand what is business acumen all about, or I'm unclear of what business acumen is all about, then just remember that it's all about internal and external environmental factors to do what? In making a business decision. That is what it's all about. And when it comes to strategy, there will always be a problem to solve and therefore a decision to make. And you can't make that decision out of context. Okay? Now, how do you bring context into your thinking, into your analysis, as well as into what? Into your response? You do so by considering our strategy models. So these will not be a surprise to you. So these are some of the most common and most practical strategic models that you will then find. And below them, what I have noted, it's more of strategic analysis tools. So now that you have these factors, they need to be made sense of. And what we then speak of risk management. We then speak of the SAF model or the SAFE model, and we then speak about the SWOT analysis. So the SWOT analysis in itself is not a strategy model because it extracts from the three strategic models, which is the PESTEL, the POTAS, as well as the 6 capitals. So now how do they connect with that analysis of what? With an analysis of internal, external consideration in making a decision. So what these models are saying, they are saying that before you make any decision, understand where the external environment is at. And what are those kind of things we need to be mindful of? So the PESTEL then gives us 6 factors. It says that the decision has to make sense given the political context. So it's all about setting the context. And it has to make sense in the economic context. So, for instance, what do we mean? It has to make sense in the economic context. It means that if right now we consider where our country, South Africa, is at, and whether some of maybe the products that used to be successful will continue to be successful, then it becomes necessary to consider whether economically it still makes sense. With where the rand is, with where the interest rates are, with where the inflation rate is at. So those are some of the things that we are going to contextualize. Because now you'll then be saying that, but wait, we've got here FJ that is looking to partner with Roasters Coffee, and they're going to pursue a particular clientele. Does it make sense from an economic perspective? Then the S, it is saying, who are you targeting? What is the social consideration, demographics relating to the context you are pursuing? So in some instances, you will then find that given the demographics, a product is likely to be successful. And in other instances, not so much. So we need to understand that. Technology, then we are talking about infrastructure, internet, and so on. Do they support our strategy? Then the E, environmental consideration, and L, the legal consideration. But what we are saying is that we cannot make a decision without considering any of those. That is the bottom line. And what we are saying is that they paint a context. So don't then think about them as what? As that we as examiners are looking for whether you know the PESTEL or not. We are looking rather for whether you can identify the relevant aspects of it and bring it in your response. It is not always the case that everything that is applicable to these models will then be relevant to your discussion. So don't just bring it, but remember, it's all about the context. Then, Porter's five forces says again, you cannot make a decision around strategy without considering who is your competition. And the difference between Pastel and Porter's simply says, Porter says that will you be will you continue to be profitable in the long term? So that's how you need to think about the five forces. So if you are to tell me about the customers, tell me how they're going to affect your long-term profitability. If you're going to tell me about your suppliers, tell me how they're going to affect your sustainability in the future. That's what Porter said. So Pastel is saying, is it a good idea to come in? In other words, is the environment conducive for my success? Is the ground fertile enough? That's the Pastel. Then Porter then says, am I going to be profitable, not today, but over an extended period of time? So if you're to say, I'm going to consider substitute, you are considering them because you want to know whether they will not stop you from making profits in the long term. Out. Can you hear me? Connected. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Rintani.
Sure. Thank you. So as I was saying, Portas is simply asking about profitability. Profitability in the long term. So he then said those five competitive forces determine your profitability. And you therefore are in a position to look at them in both ways. Meaning you can look at them as an opportunity to enhance your profitability, or you can look at them as those limitations to generating long-term profitability. And he simply concludes that if you consider that there is no long-term profitability, exit the industry. If you consider that there is long-term profitability, then continue to invest in the industry. So essentially embedded in there is an investment and an exit or disposal decision. So that means every time you've got an investment decision to make, you might need to think about Porters from an external perspective. Every time you've got an exit, you've got a business division to sell, you've got to consider whether it is safe to exit a country. Pastel supporters will then help you to decide that, because you are saying that there is no future from a profitability when it comes to this. So that's what this says. Then the last one, the six capitals. So the six capital now takes an internal view to say that I now see that there is profitability in this industry. I now see that the government is doing their best to enable an environment where I can thrive. But do I have the resources to enable me to do so? So how do I think about resources? So the six capital model is quite a beautiful model because it is saying that every business needs some form of capital in order to thrive. That's the bottom line. And it says its objective is to grow those capitals. So in some industry, you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have the people, then it will be almost impossible to thrive. And in some cases, you can have the right machinery, the right people, but without the money, it'll be impossible to thrive. So we really have that then dynamics with the capital to say that the capitals might have different weighting. And therefore, in a scenario, in a task, you need to identify which of the six capitals are significant. And just to quickly break it down, so when we talk about the F, the financial capital, we are really talking about the need to invest in our growth. But to invest in our growth, money has to come from somewhere. Where is it going to come from? So that means when you are busy evaluating a strategic proposal, you need to identify what cash requirements or what investments will be required and think about the financial capital. How do you do so? You then go back to the PRI and to the financials and you check the SFP. Do we have enough cash? Do we have too much debt? Are we generating enough cash from our operations? Because those will then tell you whether it is feasible from an internal perspective in order to do what? In order to pursue strategic objectives. I mean, even this one, the rosters and what, and FG, we were told that what? That will be required to make an upfront payment. So you should have said that's financial capital right there. So I have to comment on it before I move. Then the manufactured capital. Manufactured capital now talks about the physical assets that you need in order to thrive. The physical assets. So it could be a machinery. In the case of FJ, it could be what? It could then be the stores and their location. That's their manufactured capital. Because where they are placed, they're able to generate or limit value. So if now we are now thinking about this, we cannot not think about the location, the layout of the store, because that talks to their manufactured capital. Their ability to enhance that will then put them on a what? Sustainable growth. Then we've got the intellectual capital. When we talk about intellectual, it is now the non-tangible assets of the company. So manufactured, tangible, and then non-tangible or intangible, we are now talking about the intellectual. So now if you are to bring or to partner with someone, you cannot ignore things like brand, because those are the things that will affect what? Your own brand, the intellectual capital that you have. So those are some of the things. Am I disconnected again? It says hold on my side. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, sure. So we are now talking about the intellectual capital. And it's very important that we understand that this is an asset owned by the entity, not owned by the employees of the entity. So there is a difference between the two. So when you talk about how smart the people in the organization are, when we talk about how the culture, their approach to solving problems, then we are talking about human capital. But when we talk about the things that will be left in the business, that can be licensed, that can be used in order to create a competitive advantage and owned by the company, that's the intellectual capital. So you need to think about what are those in making a decision, because that could make something to be successful and something not to be successful. And the next one is the human capital. Human capital, when we have to make a decision. So we could have so many ambitions as the board, as management, but we are only people. We are going to have limitations as management. So now when they are taking a contract like this, do you think that they can pull it off from just having the time and the focus to it? So that's something that you therefore need to bring to say that have I considered what this will require to get right? You've got 94 franchises already. Now you're bringing these. What will it require from a management time? Will it therefore require that they bring more people? Will it require that they actually learn about coffee, which is not in their current branding? And what will it take from just giving this kind of contract sufficient management time? And also, whatever that is going to require from them, what about the people on the ground? Will they then have the right skills and expertise in order to execute on what management want? Because yes, we could get the CEOs from international ground and so on, and we then have them to lead. But the execution will happen at ground level. Do you have the right people? So that's when you are under the human capital. You are thinking about the execution from a people's perspective. So even in this case, you needed to be mindful of that. Then next, what do you have? You then have philosophy. All right, so we then have social capital, and some call it social and relationship capital. And there's two schools of thought. Some see brand as sitting as an intellectual asset of the company, and some say the brand in it captures what? Captures the goodwill. It captures the relationship, because in some cases, you might be willing to pay someone in advance because of their brand, because of the fact that, oh no, I saw that MTN is associated with this. I saw that this is 123, so therefore I'm willing to associate myself. So therefore, whenever you've got any strategic options to consider, and there is an impact based on the people, based on your customers, on your partners, then you have to think about what? You then have to think about what will it do from a social and relationship perspective. Then here, we needed to also think about the people. You are bringing a new brand into an existing brand. Who is likely to be most affected? So that's where social and relationship will help you to identify the different stakeholders. Did you consider the existing franchisees? Because they were thinking that we had planned out our model, thinking that we are going to be benefiting from the sit down like this, like this, like this. But now you then say, no, I've got a new model. I've got a new brand. So did you consider how that brand will affect your relationship with the franchisees? Because you promised them something behind your brand. Now there is this brand that might be competing with them. So that could cause a friction with your existing franchisees. Then you might also think about any potential franchisees and any other stakeholders that might be affected by this. That's when you're talking about social and relationship capital. So, and this is where you think about the people. Then you've got your last one, which is generally the one we see, let's say, very established and very significant, the blue chip companies. That's where we see them talking about natural. But medium-sized, really not usually the case, because here we are focused on your impact on the natural resources or the environment. So we are thinking about the kind of the amount of electricity you don't use. you don't use in order to support, say, the grid, the amount you don't use because you want to reduce your carbon emission. Now we are hearing that this water crisis, the amount of water that therefore you use, and so on and so on. So that's what we are now mindful of under natural. And you can imagine the small companies will, yes, they will be expected to contribute, but their contribution will not be as significant, say, as Sasol, say that now we are building a new plant, now we are generating our own power using renewable, and so on and so on. So the big players are usually the ones that have got a significant impact on natural capital, and their ability to enhance it builds on what? On their relationship, say, with government, the relationship with organization, and so on and so on. So that is then the breakdown of what? Of the 6 capital. But one of the things that is very important about them is that they interact with each other. And in some cases, you might find yourself to say that if I raise these, then this might then have to follow. So what do I mean? I mean that if you think about it, if I say that I don't have the skills and the expertise, I need to buy them in. So that means that creates a need for financial capital. If I say I don't have someone to run the organization, then I need to appoint someone, and that might require me to then set up structures to support that, so affecting my human capital as well as my financial capital. So there is a link between them, and there might also be sometimes a conflict between them. Okay, now that's the 3 strategic what? Strategic models. Now, where does the SWOT come in? So the SWOT now says, when I'm looking at all those 3 factors and how they relate to the entity, what or from what perspective do I look at them? So you are not generating new points. You are just looking at them differently in a packaged manner. Does it make sense? So you are not going to tell me something new in SWOT that is not coming from the 3 models. Because SWOT is simply a packaging tool. It now says, what are your strengths? You told me about your 6 capital. So somewhere out there, or there's bound to be your strength. You might be that you've got a good or a well-off shareholder who can supply capital when you need it, seeking financial. It might be that you've got the latest equipment allowing you to produce at a cheaper cost, seeking manufactured capital. But your SWOT analysis, it's simply a packaging tool. It is not in itself a tool to generate new points. Then you've got the SAFE model. The SAFE model, suitability, acceptability, and feasibility. So suitability, what am I assessing? I am really asking that, given that the environment is like this, given that my resources are like this, given what I want to do, is this thing that I'm looking at appropriate? Is it suitable? That is what? That is suitability. So as you can see, things have to be suitable given the external, internal, as well as the mission and vision of the company. You cannot tell me things are suitable without having a consideration of that. And we saw, what is it? Is it Hydra? Yes, Hydra was telling us quite a lot about what she wanted about FG, that she does not want these new brands. She wants to continue as the franchise. So she wants this and this and this. Now she then says, there is this. So you need to ask, is it suitable given what management wants, given what their strategy is? Then number 2, is it acceptable? So that's where now the social and relationship capital comes in. You cannot talk about acceptability without thinking about the people. So you are now saying that given our employees, given our franchisees, given our current management team, given, so you are now considering the different perspective. Because at the end of the day, the strategy has to be put before people and impact people. So you want to know what? You want to know whether it will fly. Simply said. Right? Then what do you have? You have the F. F simply saying, will I make money? What drives our ability to make money? It is certainly what we put down now and what we're going to make and what and our cost. Then you might need to think about how does now that link back to our strategic model? You cannot talk to me about what you're going to generate without talking to me about the economic consideration. You cannot talk about that without talking about the profile of the customer you are pursuing. So that is revenue. Then you can also not talk to me about the plans you have in terms of making money without talking to me about competition. So again, three things are now talking to revenue. So if now they're talking about making revenue, so you should be telling me about competition. You should be talking to me about the customer profile. You should be talking to me about the economic environment. Then now, the cost. What should you be talking to me about? The competitive forces, the suppliers. Who is going to supply this? Where are they? What is their power? How do they affect me? What is it that they're going to be supplying? Because if they're going to supply, because this company is international, one could then assume that when we are thinking about the S that they use are also what? International. Now, when they're international, it triggers also economic factors like Forex. So those are then the things that I will need to just be mindful of. How will it affect my operations? Because from managing a foreign supplier, it might be something that is so demanding. It's easy to get what? To get, say, a KFC, Nando's, because they've already formed relationship with the local suppliers like your Rainbow, Astral, and so on. But imagine bringing an international brand and what? And having to make it work locally. So we can therefore not talk about profitability, feasibility without thinking about the cost, and we cannot talk about the cost without thinking about the supplier and the relevant economic factors. So that's why I'm saying that those models are not introducing anything new. They're just helping you to package. So, because the question always comes, should I use SEF or should I use this or that? But you cannot use them in isolation. If you tell me you've done SWOT, it means that you've done the first three bubbles. If you tell me you've done SAFE, you have done also the three bubbles. Then arising from them as well, it's that in every strategic decision, management has to be mindful about risk. Simply say, risk is what will stop me from getting what I want to do. So these are now coming out to do what? They are launching a 25-year master franchise agreement. What could possibly go wrong there? And I'm sure when you're doing your research, you saw, what is it? Dunkin' Donuts. They didn't do so well. What did they end up doing? They ended up closing the store. To close a store or to close a franchise, it is by far one of the worst decisions. Because you are saying that there is not even anyone else that is interested in this. That's how bad it is. I have to just close. There is nothing. And now the question is, but you are in a 25-year agreement and you're closing in year 5. So in that article, I hope that it will have then triggered that we need to be mindful that we can exit this contract if they turn sour. We then saw the owner of what? Fish and Chips, Taste Holdings. Very excited, bringing Starbucks in South Africa. Then what happened? we hear that this thing of Starbucks, it requires significant investment to make it work. Just opening a store, that's what that article said. So you're coming in with that knowledge into this assessment. And now you're saying that the financial capital, I should not be deceived about it being initial. I should ask about what is the cost of setting up. Because if the cost is too high, then I'll struggle to attract new franchisees. And I will also struggle myself to invest in it to make it work. Because we know FJ, when something is not working, they do buy it back. But will they afford to pursue such a strategy in this particular case? So those are then the things that before we even saw the IOD, we needed to be mindful of. Are we all clear? Are we all clear? Any questions at this point before we get into the meat? So we're going to look at what? We're going to look at the IOD, but one of the things that Elton and I that spoke significantly about, it's this kind of unpacking before you even go in. So he said he even prepared 2 pages for you. So I'm sure you're gonna love it. Yes, sure. Sorry, there was the question, did I lose you?
Hello, hi.
Good evening.
Good evening, Nathan. How are you?
I'm well, and yourself?
I'm well, thanks. I just want to
Great.
ask a quick question.
Sure.
You cited an example of franchisees that end up failing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm asking myself, like, in the research period, how would I have picked that? If you got me,
yeah. So remember that. So I'm not sure whether you might have seen the reflection video already, because that was part of the trigger, which then said we are looking to enter into a master franchise agreement. Then from there, I then said, but have we seen this in South Africa? How does it work? And the master franchise agreement are usually managed at a country level. That's what I then gathered during my research. And when I asked about the examples in South Africa, then I found one, the McDonald's one. Then I found the Starbucks one. I found the Burger King one. I then found different ones that they were saying that they exist in the context of South Africa. Then when I looked in terms of what makes them successful, because I was like saying that I've not seen, say, what do you call it, the Dunkin' Donuts one. I have seen very limited number of Popeye stores. I have seen a number of Burger King and McDonald's. So what drives their success? That's what I was then trying to understand during that research. Then I found that, oh, there are some not so positive stories about the Starbucks and the Dunkin' Donuts one, whereas there are success stories around the McDonald's and so on. So there are those kind of things that I then considered and discovered as well during my research period.
Well understood.
Does it make sense, Courage? Yes.
It does.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. So if you have not got any chance, I'll encourage you to have a look at that screencast just to see how did we get there. And because one of the things was to understand what is a master franchise agreement, because for me, it is something that I might have had, but I didn't know specifically how it worked. So the triggered action was, how does a master franchise agreement works? And they are very risky, these things, based on what I read. Yes.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
The Starbucks one was
Oh, sorry. Thanks.
Sure.
So, would you agree with the Starbucks one? They didn't do a proper like human movement or human capital analysis, just based on the culture that we have here in South Africa. Because if you look at the initial setup of Starbucks, it's for people who are working at the Starbucks, right? So we don't have that big culture of going to coffee shops and working at coffee shops to buy coffee. You understand? So the analysis there wasn't properly done when they
You
acquired it.
reckon?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't make sense to me because we've got a lot of other coffee shops that sells better quality coffee, and that's why we don't have the actual setup that a Starbucks has.
Yeah, so the difference I understand, and you know what was also interesting when I also did some research or some article I bumped into, that Starbucks is known as the brand that made the Chinese drink coffee. And they were saying that that's how powerful that brand is, that you took a coffee to give that drink tea and it became successful. So maybe here they thought there will be that success story as well. So remember, strategy to some extent, strategy is like rolling a dice. you can, yeah.
You understand? So they like flashy things. That's why Apple designed a new color for them. See,
But South Africans like a lot of things as well. Yeah, but yeah, I'm not a coffee drinker. I find the coffee is also expensive. So I always wonder, like, I see people that seem to be addicted to this. I was like, yeah, what is exciting here? But yeah, so people are different. So yeah, and I'm saying, yeah, I might not understand it as well. But yeah, I wonder whether it could be said it's still in growth phase or whether it is something that therefore will eventually pick up. I don't know where the numbers are. It used to be better when it was in Taste Holding because it was a listed company, but I think they moved it to private hands. So one doesn't know how well they're doing or not so well they're doing. Or is it? Sure. Yeah. Yeah, it was one of those. Right. So how long are the videos available for? So yeah, the videos will continue to be available even after. Okay, so let's go. So let's focus. All right. So now let me get back to my PRI, to my IOD. Sure.
That YouTube guy doing Prime, right? Would you say when that was introduced, was that like a strategic decision of rolling the dice? Because I speak out of correction, that drink, if you have tested it, tastes like those flavored juice where you just poured water into it. And now checkers came into play to like destabilize the market, because that drink was now going like at 500 rands or 1,000 rand for a bottle, and now it's like 30 rand. So would that be like more of a strategic decision that was made when they first introduced the drink and putting it at a 500 rand price tag?
Yeah, so the other thing that, and I think, yeah, the SEMA professionals will really acknowledge is that there is what we call strategic marketing. And I think there, if one wants to explore that, you go there. So they understood the customer, they understood probably where people are at a particular time. They understood the power of using a person to drive sales. So there are quite some interesting elements that we saw. But what I just also realized, it's the management of social and relationship. I mean, my little daughter was telling me, like, when you go to Checkers, to say, oh, teachers say we should not drink that. I was like, oh, they forgot to manage the teachers, because it would have helped, because next thing she would have been crying for it. But those kind of elements then impacted probably maybe the price and so on. But I think this was quite a lot that was invested from a marketing perspective. But yeah, very interesting case study, because I think everybody was talking about it at some point. All right, so how much time do I have? Okay, Sean. So what I've then done in the slides, so I have taken the IOD that you will have had, and I then what's the word? I then highlighted some of the key things that will then be important, and I will have wanted you to highlight. Yes, there could be more, but some of these are the ones that I've highlighted here. So, and the two color schemes, it's when now I'm saying that when you see something, then it's likely going to trigger a couple of aspects. And some of the things that will then be triggered will then be responded to by the detail in the yellow. But remember, context will demand that we should not forget what is in the PRI already. We should not forget what FJ, strategic objective, vision, mission, and its capitals are sitting. So I mentioned last week that FJ was looking at various strategic options for expanding our franchise operations. So we know that it's talking about that other PRI, we put it close to us now. We have just received notice from Roasters Coffee. I mean, I did my research. I didn't see any company called Roasters Coffee, right? So who are they? So now, one of the things that it's always quite important, and for me, it's something that is always necessary to do, is that when you see any strategic option introducing a party to it, which is always going to be likely, so a significant party to it, you need to have, let's call it a laundry list of what you need to start asking about. So when I say strategic party, what do I mean? It could be a strategic customer. It could be a strategic supplier, or it could be just a partner. But what makes them strategic? It is the fact that I might be in it with them for a very long period of time, or it could be that they are going to significantly invest in my business through sales, or I'm going to significantly invest in their business by acquiring things. So every time you see a strategic counterparty, then there are things that you should be taking from your laundry list. One is their reputation. So you cannot be entering into a strategic partnership without considering the reputation. So that's why I'm saying the green. So whenever we've got green here, there are things in my laundry list that I needed to be mindful of. So one, their brand. So one is their reputation. So their reputation is, do I want to be in business with them? I mean, if I read around, like right now, we were reading about what? We were reading about SPA, and the couple of people that actually went to court, or is it court, where they were saying that the way that it deals with its franchisees, it's quite concerning. We saw back in the years the likes of Tyler Nail, what is it? The nail company. There was that carte blanche thing.
Tammy Taylor.
Yes. Thank you. So those are some of the things that their brand has to be considered, because I want to know whether I can put money behind that. So one, I need to think about their reputation. And two, their financial standing. That's something that is important. Their financial standing. So what do I mean their financial standing, and why will it be important in this case? Because I want to know, we saw earlier on when there are questionable things about the marketing fund. So I don't want someone who will then be struggling, and when I pay, say, franchise fees in order to support the brand, they don't have money to support it. Because if the brand is not well supported, it will not succeed. So now I can't go into a partnership without considering those two major aspects. And by extension, I might also start asking, how did I even get here? Is there no one else that I can be mindful of or that I can consider before I sign a 25-year agreement? So I have to think about those things from my laundry list. So now they are there, they're triggered, they are now at the back of my mind. Then they say a leading global coffee shop operation. So when I was asking about the brand, then I could now start connecting and applying to say that, yes, this is a matter that I will be keen to further explore before I enter into this. That what makes them a leading player? I know they're global. Which countries are they in? Have they been successful? And the question that came earlier on, it was to also probably explore the suitability of the brand in the South African market. That we know that you were successful in these other countries, but are there some countries that resemble that of South Africa and therefore we can take lessons from? So I will want to know about this particular brand. Then they intend into entering into negotiation with us about becoming the exclusive franchise partner in South Africa. So examiners love this. They love this because now it challenges your critical thinking. So they are saying that we are to become the exclusive franchise partner in South Africa, right? What stands out about the highlighted aspect? What is it that you will want to clarify? What is it that you would like to clarify? Or what is coming to your mind? Is that statement to you complete? What does it mean when they say exclusive franchise partner in South Africa? Well, what are some of the things that you just want to clarify when you see that? So one, when you say exclusive has to work both ways, right? So I'm your exclusive franchise partner, but does that mean you cannot compete with me? Because I have to be mindful of that. And that's where a lot of companies have been banned. Because one, you've got owner stores and franchise stores. And we've given you the agreement that you'll be the exclusive franchise partner. You are. Hey, but we like what's happening in South Africa. We want to come in as well. So that is something that is what? That is going to be important. We need to clarify that from them, that what do you mean? Right? What do you mean? And we then saw that you said in South Africa, are you saying that you could then have other partners elsewhere, therefore limiting our scope to grow? Because the last thing I want is to then discover that this is a good brand and I actually want it to take to Zim, to Moz, and so on and so on, only to find that, no, you are not going to allow me to do that. So I want to understand before I come in this exclusivity and how then it works. And you have now done what? So that's the idea here. Then they said that roaster coffee is a premier roaster and retail of specialty coffees sourced from selected countries in Africa and Latin America. So now they're telling me where their suppliers are in selected countries. And what? And in Africa selected countries, as well as Latin America. Now I'm trying to understand that how will it then work with me that is based in South Africa? Because I understand you source it. So how does this sourcing work? You're a global company, so you should have a plan. So am I going to be the one that will then be sourcing directly? Or are you then going to be the one who supplies me after you've sourced? So how then do the relationship with the suppliers work? Because we understand that FJ, the reason we're asking this is that FJ said something before that made us think. They spoke about the procurement fee. And they say they charge franchises for buying things on their behalf. So now we are realizing that that's part of their business model. So where will we then be fitting in this arrangement? Okay. A typical store will offer sit down and takeaway options. And we like it because that's what Hajra said. Hajra said she does not want to do these ghost kitchens. She wants to do what? She wants sit down and takeaways. She told us in the PRI. So we highlight it because we like it. So this is likely to tick that box for Hajra and therefore the box of suitability. Then she says that, and it offers premium coffees and related beverages. So now I know that their brand, Fodjan, focuses on also supplying beverages. So what is a related beverage? What is a coffee related beverage? Or what is it? And therefore, excuse me, I need to know about what kind of product portfolio will then exist after we included this. Then they said Roasters also offers prepared meals and snacks such as sandwiches, muffins, wraps, and biscuits. So now that talks to the entire product portfolio. That what does Fodjan have and what does this have? And that's where now the consideration about whether this will not be creating competition came in. So now I want to understand whether these products are supplementing each other or they're competing with each other. As a franchisor, I really don't care because I'm saying the customer will still buy, but it is my franchisees that I need to be mindful of. The Roasters offer 60-minute Wi-Fi, great. The target market is middle to upper income consumers. It is middle to upper income consumers. So now I've got a particular customer. When now do I see these things fitting in? This is middle and upper market. So you might be somewhere. Let's say you're in Cape Town, you're in Joburg. If I say upper market, what comes to mind? Where do you expect to see this? So you start having a picture, but is that picture aligned to what they say about Fodjan earlier on? Because they said they are looking for densely populated areas and malls because they are cheaper. But now you are now changing your strategy here. So you are now building up your operating leverage because you might need to be in highly dense mall and also those that tend to be a little bit more expensive. So these are the things that we are starting to think about. Then the consumers themselves, are they there? You wonder, right? Are the consumers there? Why? Given where the economy is. And also, don't they have a brand already? I mean, everybody knows Starbucks. So how are you going to kick in? What about the likes of Vida Cafe? What about Seattle Coffee? I am not seeing it every corner. I mean, you are now bringing another coffee brand. What will make it stand out? So now I'm also starting to think about, I didn't know about this brand. Now I want to bring it to South Africa. What will it take to really sponsor this brand, financially speaking? And to what extent will Roasters support me in that. Because one of the things that I think has been quite criticized about international brands is that they have this copy and paste strategy. When now they say it worked in America, it worked in Europe, we're going to do it in South Africa, but South Africa then is a different market altogether. And you find that the brand is no longer what? Successful. Then we continue because at this point we don't have the task. And it's always quite important that, yeah, you have to answer the task. You have to respond to it. So now, Rosta's head office indicated that the group will be interested in what? In entering into a 25-year master franchise agreement. Based on your history, is that standard? Based on your research, is that standard? Because I was taken a little aback when I saw 25 years. I was like, that's a long time. So every time you see a contract, you need to think about what? How will I get out if it doesn't work? And that's a very important question. How will I get out if it doesn't work? And also, why is it 25? Does it mean that the NPV works at year 25? Because that's a very long period. So I'm now thinking about if I'm to do an NPV that we triggered, will it be a 25-year NPV? And at this point, I'm also thinking, what are the renewal terms? Because if I don't have certainty around renewals, that can affect the brand because I'm likely going to stop investing, say at year 15. Because I'm thinking that if I put, say, a 10 million, where will I return it? So I'm going to stop investing at a particular point in time if I'm worried about the returns and the renewals. So I see a contract, my laundry list is saying, what is what? What is? What are the termination clauses? What are the renewal options? Are they there to begin with? And also, I'm thinking about what? I'm thinking about, what is it? I'm thinking about the financial feasibility. This is a long-term project. So I'm bound to do an NPV analysis. Okay? MJ will be responsible for all franchise operations in South Africa, all franchise operations, as it is for its existing brand. So do you think that they will have sufficient management resources in order to manage these two brands? Because it's one thing to introduce, say, a brand, a competing brand, but this is a master franchise agreement, which might have terms in terms of what you need to do by when. So now you might be thinking and sitting here, will I have the resources to undertake this? So now what could be required to undertake this? Firstly, you need to convince the market that this is a good brand. And at the same time, you're getting convinced that whether this is a good brand or not, you are trying to figure out where to now place it from a strategic location perspective, because it might not necessarily be in similar places. Maybe there could have been some synergies if now you are saying that you are pursuing the same customer profile as the Fodjan brand. So you are now having to learn maybe how to engage with different landlords and so on and so on. So this might be something that can be heavy in the short term. So rosters will need an upfront payment. How much though? Did you see how much Taste Holding paid for Starbucks during your research? I think somewhere, if I'm not mistaken, I saw about 20 million to get that master franchise, just to get it. But things were so bad, by the time they sold it, it was only 4 million. So that means regardless of the investment they had to make, and the fact that they had bought something for 20 and having to sell it for 4, that's a loss already, not even including the stores that they had to build and set up, and the losses that they had to fund. So these things are expensive. So now my radar is high in terms of, I want to know what is the cost of this, so that we don't find ourselves in a situation where you're destroying shareholder value, where we are bleeding cash, and do we even have enough cash? Based on what we saw in the PRI, cash was being bent at a very alarming rate. I think it halved in just 1 year. So now I'm thinking that if I'm to pursue this, where will the cash come from? The funding for this, okay? And this is yet to be negotiated for the right to operate the brand for 25 years. They generally charge a master franchise agreement, a franchise holder, a quarterly royalty rate of what? Of 3% of total store revenues. Okay, sounds decent, not too bad. So that's decent, 3% of total revenues. They've suggested that we in turn should charge 5% of store revenue. So this comes as suggestion, but is it a suggestion that I need to implement? Is it a suggestion that is in the contract? Because currently, what do we charge for our own franchisees? How much are we charging? What is that percentage we charge? So we charge 5%. But ours, there are additional things we provide. Because after the procurement fee, after the marketing fund, and so on and so on. So one might wonder, are we still going to top up with the marketing fund? Are we still going to say that if we are required to procure from these international suppliers, are we going to charge also the procurement fee? Because that's bugged it up to what, to about 10%. So now I need to think about the pricing, and also to say that, but this is a new brand. Someone might be comfortable to pay 10 because they've seen what the Fodjan brand can do. But this one, what should we do when we go to the market? What should the pricing be in order to win over new franchisees? Is really the 5% a considered approach, or is it something that they just throw out there? And do we have flexibility to choose? I'm very excited about this venture, now the task, because it could deliver both earnings growth and diversification. Tick another box from suitability perspective. Please prepare a list of key issues that we need to consider in evaluating this opportunity. So let's go through that. Prepare a list of key issues that we need to investigate in evaluating the opportunity. If we were in ITC, what would have been the required? That's how I want you to see this. Because when it's like this, it sounds so high level. What do you want? And as I was thinking, I got you. Then you said, also include key matters to be clarified. I was like, but I had already given them to you. Now you're asking for the same thing. Like, what is it? If this was an ITC required, how would you have framed it? Luyanda, please, jump in, please. How would you have phrased it? Okay, I think, Luyanda, are you struggling to open? All right, anyone. So how will you, I just want to hear how you will phrase this as a required for ITC. What is the two, what are the two things that Hydra is asking for. So the key things that we need to be mindful of or to investigate in evaluating the opportunity, and the key matters that need to be clarified. So what will you have then said as the required? So one, someone is saying the factors to consider. So do we agree that the fact that we have to pay an upfront amount, it's saying to us that we've got an investment decision? So this is like an NPV follow-up question to say, what will then be the factors to consider before we enter into this agreement altogether? But if that is question number one, what is question number two? The key matters that need to be clarified with roster coffee. What are those? Because we know this becomes risky from an APC perspective. So why is it a risk? Because you might be sitting there and saying that, what if I mix them up? Okay. All right. So what if I mix them up? Okay, sure.
So as we were going through the IOD,
Yes.
you mentioned that we're not sure about the terms of the contract, your exclusivity and all of that. So those would be the things that I would list in that, the ones where they're not giving us the detail and we still need to understand and will affect our decision.
100%. So 100%. So one, it's where we are saying, what are the strategic factors that we need to consider before we enter into this agreement? Then two, it is now zooming into the contract. So we needed to zoom into the contract. So now, essentially, what we'll then have, or what will now be risky, right, is that we need to address both aspects for us to be a C. You cannot be a C in the APC if there is a specific requirement and you don't address it. Here there were two requirements, two tasks or subtasks. One, key issues, and two, key matters to clarify. Then I thought they were done. Examiners, I think they get excited. Like they told us about Jeff Bezos. I was like, they just read a book. They was convinced they just read this book. But then they said, your memorandum should not be longer than 2 type pages. So now let's talk about how a C looks like here. A C, one, your memo should not be more than 2 pages. If it was more than 2, you're out. You could possibly be a BC, but I mean, there is an instruction to say limit it to 2 pages. I just wonder how with the software, whether when you PDF, the software doesn't move pages. I was like, I hope that is not considered. But anyways, so I was like, that's requirements. So let's agree that whenever there is a specific task or a subtask, if you don't address it, we cannot talk about a C. We can at best talk about a BC, but not a C. Usually those are not the forgivable stuff. So here, they then said 1, no more than 2 pages, 2, the key matters to clarify, and 3, the key issues. What I wondered though was the next thing. They said your memo, then when they used the Jeff Bezos thing, they said, and executives are required to prepare well-structured and concise memos ahead of the meeting. That's a nice to have. Do you understand? So they are not, Hydra is not asking me that. It's a nice to have. So you might be thinking that, what if I mix them up? Your memo is not well structured, but you didn't ask me to separate. So you cannot prevent me from being a C because I didn't separate the issues, because I mixed them up. Yes, you can penalize me the communication, but I can still be a C. You might say I can't be an HC, that's fine. But I can still be a C because you didn't specify to me that deal with these things separately. You told me it will be nice to have a what? A well-structured memo. Do you understand that? But you then told me 2 pages, it's non-negotiable. So a C, how is it looking? 1, you are listing. So I see some lists. Maybe you have a table, you then say, these are the items, and this is the explanation. But then what was concerning, and I don't know whether they forgot as the examiners, but when they forget like this, it's always good for you. They say, and also include key matters that need to be clarified. So do you see what is the problem here? There's no verb. So you can get away with it. It's to your advantage because you didn't ask for a verb. You said include. What is to include? Should I just list? Should I ask you questions? Should I describe? Should I discuss? So that's always to your advantage. Because there they said list and provide explanations. So there you need to be in. Twice. Like, how does it work? I guess that's my cue. Stepping into the ESCOM. This one. Yeah, so yeah, they should not be making P around election time. What should sure, I think, but I'm still here, right? Am I still here? Oh, but the camera is off. How am I here?
The light is just off.
Oh, so there's still power.
We can hear you, Randani.
Yeah, but yes.
All right. Sure. Sorry. Yeah, the lights went off. I thought it was another load shedding.
You can still.
All right. So let me quickly wrap up. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. So there's a question. I'm not sure whether the mics are still on. Are they on? All right. Sure. Thank you.
Within the IOD,
Sure.
it speaks about how, okay, we need to prepare a list of issues
Yeah.
that the company needs to investigate.
Yeah.
So that investigate,
Yeah.
I'm not sure, like, is it referencing out to the extent of work or just how detailed your response needs to be or the direction of your response? Like, what do we make of this investigate word?
So at that point when they said prepare a list of key issues to investigate, for me it was still a list. That's what you're asking me about. So you are not saying how we should investigate. You are just asking for a list to investigate. I will say I want you to what to investigate whether there's an existence of customers. I want you to investigate about. So I could list all the things you need to investigate. But I think they then remedied themselves later and said listing these key issues together with the explanation. So that's when now they clarified to me that just saying consider investigate customers, suppliers, the income levels and so on, it will not be enough. I needed to do it. I needed to now explain them. Yes.
Thank you.
Sure. So then just to then quickly wrap it up. Sure, sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Mtela. Mine is just a quick one on the issue of the 2 pages that was strict.
Yeah.
Does it include the memo, the email content?
But because they said a memo, I will expect you to have an attachment.
Okay, so
Yes.
it's just now maybe you are a manual writer like me. You will have your first page with your introduction and what, and then the 2 pages now be covered on the next 2 pages, right?
Yeah.
On the memo.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And you also manually writing 2 pages there. Yeah. So yeah, handwriting people, I'm sure it was quite a fun one.
Question on the C, right?
On the C proper.
On how to get the C,
Sure.
right? So they just said list key matters and key considerations. Where do you draw the line? Can I just write two of each? Is it enough, or can I write 6 of each? Like, what is the like the standard or the minimum that you should write down to get a C?
So there is never going to be such, because even themselves, they will not list all the possible issues. Otherwise, it will not be 2 memo. It will be not 2 pages. So for me, it will be a matter of, are they one, core enough and relevant enough? So we are talking about coverage, right? Do you have the core issues that are important for FJ and Fooders brands? That's number one. And the explanation will then be about the quality and the depth thereof. So the question is, instinctively, when I see a 1-pager memo, I might think it's too short. But the 1 page could be, you are hitting the points and you are even hitting the coverage. So in terms of the marking grid, the marking grid had about 7 indicators. That's it. That's the marking grid. But it was a loaded marking grid. So you might have seen the accounting one and the text one. They were specific line dealt with an issue. But here, because it's strategy, and as you heard us talk, firstly, there are different ways to look at it. I could say that I'm worried about this, so I'm now in risk management mentality. So now I could then be touching on, I'm worried about the customers because, I'm worried about the suppliers because. So now, then the question is of depth. Is it enough to then just identify the customer, but hit that one thing that I think cannot be ignored? And tick one of the things that they might have had under the customer consideration. So that's why, yeah, strategy is always nice to write, but to be a mark of strategy, you get so many points, and some of them are just quality points. So they always have to achieve balance because of that. Because there are different ways to look at it. There are so many things you can get there. You can focus on one thing, but it has got so many dimensions that you can end up doing well with it. So it's those kind of things that need to be balanced at the end of the day when they drive the C process. But they will be clear what is the threshold for coverage and what is the threshold for depth. So here, this is just a high level in terms of what? What about grammar? Your handwriting will be able to highlight all those issues. Wait, what are they saying? Is it starting from there? They asked about key risk. I included Forex, and they said Forex is generic. So they asked about key risk. I included. So when you say they told you Forex is generic, what do you mean? Who is that? Are you talking about this one? Okay. Yeah, sure. Please, yes,
No.
thank you, Leander. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, like on the final exam, it was like a board course exam. So like, yeah, it was part and parcel of, yeah. So like I included Forex. They said, no, Forex is not a key consideration.
But wait, because now the question is, the context will always be important. And what you also wrote, if you then say, we need to consider Forex, even here, I will say it's a little bit generic. But now if you say, we need to consider Forex, as some of the suppliers might be based outside South Africa, then now you've now contextualized it to me. Do you understand? So I think the comment needs to be contextualized as well, to say, yeah, what was the issue? Did you explain Forex as it relates to the context? Especially remember that Forex can be from a customer perspective or exports or import perspective. So if you're not clear, it can come off as generic. So I'll then just ask you to be mindful, to clarify how it's arising in the specific context.
I get you, Rendane, but I believe I was clear because like the lead time was around 2 months, and like they said, petrol is our significant expense like in the production. So I try as much as I can to explain and everything. They said no, this one is not a key risk. Like I was supposed like to identify other risk content in the scenario.
Yeah, but we can always take it offline, because I think the context will always be good for us to be on the same page. But I think, yeah, my time is now done. Where am I? Oh, did it disconnect me? Oh, it did, right? Oh, wait, did it disconnect me when? Oh, no, it's not. Okay. So just to highlight, so these are some of the things. So as you can see, I was then breaking it down using the SEF model. You don't need to do that. But for me, it just helped me to clarify and connect with the IOD, PRI, as well as my research better. So one, I considered the suitability of this. And for me, it was undertaking strategic analysis. I did a risk analysis by considering the different parties and some of the things I'll think about there. I then did feasibility by thinking about the 25-year agreement, initial investment, and so on. But then below, I then said, it's all about packaging. I need to remember to package it the way that they wanted. Because we read, we analyzed, but at the end of the day, how does it need to be packaged? So that is just my view there. So the indicators I wrote next to it. So I think, yeah, I didn't like how it was. So for me, I just brought a little bit of structure, but then I linked it back to say these were some of the indicators and how Saika looked at it. But you might have a different way, but then you can say, yeah, how will it then connect better with the marking grid? So that at the end of the day, that's what matters. How do I silence? All right. All right. So good night, everyone. But sure, I'll respond to the chats on the queries as Sultan goes. Where can I get? So I just uploaded the slides, so you can find them there. Do we have the Saika solution? Unfortunately, not. We don't have the Saika solution to share. Let me just put it that way, to share. Yes. Baby CS are real. Wow. All right. Good night, everyone, and all the best. Elton, are you in?
I'm here, Rendane. Good evening, everyone.
All right. Good evening. Good evening.
Rendane,
Yes.
just one thing before you go. I saw you spoke about the SAP model. I was going to talk about it as well. Should I just park it, or can I also go into it?
So I told them that you will then unpack it. So okay, I spoke about this, and then I think that's a plan about unpacking the PRI. I told them that you will then go through it in detail, and now you can use this in order to do that there, as well as on the day.
Okay, cool, awesome.
Sure. All right. So
cool. Thanks, Rendane. So I'll take my cue from you guys in terms of break shell. It's now 18 minutes past show. We'll start at 8:30. Is that okay with everyone?
All right. 8:30 it is.
Okay, great. Once I'll see you guys at 8:30.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you,
Thanks.
Altena.
Thanks, Rendani.